Oh, there she is. My favorite Tucson Representative Stephanie Stahl Hamilton is here to join us today. Last minute, I literally texted her maybe a half an hour ago and asked if she could maybe just give us a rundown of all the crazy stuff that's been going on in the Capitol. And here she is. So real quick, let me introduce you properly, Representative Stahl Hamilton. And because it was last minute, we pretty much just took it off of like your campaign page. But Stephanie Stahl Hamilton is an Arizona State Legislature House member and an Arizonan who spent her early childhood years on Navajo tribal lands. She's married to Derek Hamilton, a middle school teacher in TUSD. 25 years of marriage has blessed them with 3 children, which I saw just the other day that I think one of your kids just turned 17. Wow. And dogs. The dogs are as important. Unless you're Christy Noem, then dogs don't matter. After completing her Master's of Divinity at Princeton Theological Seminary, Stephanie and Derek made Tucson their home. She's an ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church, and she is also, by the way, one of our consistent secular supporters. She scores 100% because you know what? Even though she's a minister, maybe perhaps because she's a minister, she understands the importance of the separation of church and state. So we are so lucky to have you here today, Representative. How are you feeling today?
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling all the feels, right? I go from just weeping to basking to, trying to get myself grounded. I think I just try to sort of, well, not sort of, but disassociate and stay in my head until we got that bill signed. I was just trying to stay steady. So, yeah.
I don't know how you maintained your cool. I don't know how, watching you and Senator Hernandez in the Senate, you in the House and her in the Senate, just, you were so coordinated. And as Senator Hernandez said, as they tried to complain about her knowing the rules, she said, look, people, this is all we've got are the rules. Because how many years, Representative Stahl Hamilton, how many years has this bill been introduced and never even gotten a hearing?
This was the 6th year in a row.
Yeah. 6th year in a row. So much dishonesty in those lengthy soliloquies that we got on Wednesday, since they're only working 1 day a week. But okay. I want you to drive this narrative because this is your rodeo. So could you maybe just break down? Okay, let's start with the Arizona Supreme Court decision that was 3 weeks ago, whenever that was. And then maybe just tell us, what was the process there after that happened? How did you all organize?
Well, I think we need to just even back up even further, right? If I may, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible so I don't, I'm a storyteller by nature. But in the state of the state, our reproductive freedom stakeholders know that reproductive freedom is a priority of Governor Hobbs. And they had been working diligently and very hard, and especially under the leadership of former Representative Athena Salmon. I mean, please, let's give credit where credit is due. Long before I ran for the legislature, I'd learned about this 1864 abortion ban. And it kept me up at nights. It was worrisome, troublesome, and it was on my mind when I decided to run for the ledge that I would do something about it. Well, much to my relief, Rep. Salmon had already been in there trying to do something about it, and so I knew we were in good hands. And so she had pushed really hard, in all the work that she has done in reproductive freedom work. To get it on the governor's radar to mention in the state of the state. And there were 3 priorities. One was the Right to Contraception Act, clean repeal of the 1864 ban. And then the third thing is the state of Arizona in statutes requires DHS to collect and compile a yearly report on information from people who receive abortions every year. This data that nobody has any business, and one thing does not have to do with the other. It's nobody's damn business. And so those were the 3 priorities that the governor mentioned in her state of the state. And so those were some of the last three bills that I dropped in the hopper. I did my very first TikTok saying, here they are. Pick up the phone, call your representatives, your senators, and let them know you want these bills to get a hearing. So fast forward to March, and we were winding down with our committee work. It had already been crossover, and we thought it's time to kick up some dust on the Right to Contraception Act. I thought that would be low-hanging fruit. And honestly, and we did a little media tour, but it came at a time when IVF was under attack in Alabama. So, a very critical time where we, thought, all right, let's get this on the radar. We kicked up some dust, and lo and behold, Senator Borelli gave us such a gift. I mean, y'all, let's step back and remember, contraception, bare aspirin, put it between your knees, and honestly, the man who was screaming about last Wednesday, toxic masculinity, it goes hand in hand with telling women to put an aspirin between their knees, just is such a nod to giving permission for sexual violence, sexual assault, right? It condones it, not so many other things. So, you just have to hear this man talk several times. Well, he gave us a gift there. And it was then when after that press conference, that we had gamed out the parliamentary moves to get the Right to Contraception Act on the board. And what we didn't know at that time was that was our trial run for what we needed to do in the month of April. So, a month before this all started, and over in the House, they were like, all right, you want to do this? You want to play these games? Well, you're going to have to argue for why we should hear this bill on the right to contraception, but you cannot say the words contraception, right? And my guess is, if I had to guess, they were trying to stave off nonsense, well, you know what I mean, BS that Senator Borelli did, because, how else are they going to keep their members in line? These are hot button issues, and their members go off half court, clearly, as we've seen in the floor soliloquies, right? And so I think he was trying to tap down on that and didn't realize that he handed us another gift in this whole conversation about reproductive freedom. And so I was like, okay, challenge accepted. I went and did it, threaded that needle, made my case, and then turned around and was like, okay, I'm going to blast the hell out of being censored for what I could and couldn't say, but I turned it on them and said, the only way our voices get heard are through our speeches and these bills, and you keep censoring both, so, so then when it came time, when the Supreme Court, April 9th, unveiled their ruling, we were ready to go. We already had the plan, and we had our trial run in March. And so it was nothing hard for our caucus to fall in line and to step up. We had all the parliamentary moves. And the thing of it is, in between, when we were debating bills during crossover week, and some of those really nasty anti-immigration, racist, white supremacist bills were coming through the House bills before they were transmitted to the Senate, I will say the Democrats got beat up a little bit because we needed to be smart about our parliamentary rules and practices and our rule book. And I realized what was going on, so I immediately went to leadership and to our legal counsel, our chief of staff, and I said, we will not go into final debate on Senate bills without stepping through these parliamentary rules. We need the rule book. And so they put together on one of our days off a little training where we came in and they stepped us through all of the rules in the rule book. And, the request back from the caucus was, we learned a lot. We want to be on the floor and we want to practice. Well, we didn't have time. We knew this was coming down the path. Legal reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to throw your bill up on the board for the repeal no matter what the Supreme Court decision is, just like we did. I said, sure, let's go. Let's go. We have a bill. This is why we dropped the bill. And so lo and behold, Tuesday came, Wednesday, April 10th, we show up only to find out that Representative Gress had decided he was going to make the motion without talking to me about my bill, without approaching us. He was going to giddy up, charge in, and be the savior of women because, it's only women, women, and not people who can get pregnant. Let's not broaden out that narrative, or lest we offend their delicate sensibilities on gender.
And can we point out how many bills did Representative Gress drop that would have the fetal personhood? 4 bills, including one, I believe, about driving in the carpool lane for pregnant people, stiffer penalties for domestic abusers against pregnant people, stiffer penalties or something like that for substance abuse for pregnant people.
And then paternal, some child support, because we're gonna have pregnant women. We're gonna have pregnant women fund pregnant women.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, let's just like just today, even this 17 states who are filing a lawsuit on the Pregnant Worker Act, things that protect pregnant people while they're at work to have sufficient water breaks, meal breaks, lactation breaks. These people do not care about women. I'm sorry, go ahead. You're good.
Yeah. So at any rate, the nice thing was we had already been through a trial run. We had already orchestrated it. We had already come together as a caucus. We had stepped through the training in between times. And so we gained out the potential moves. And quite honestly, when it was time to go, it was time to go. The piece that inwardly I knew, which was what helped keep me grounded, and I said it yesterday at the press conference when we were signing the bill, was all we needed to do was show up and vote yes. The people of Arizona were on our side, and I know that. We know that. It's something that people we needed, that we know want, and so all we needed to do was just remain disciplined, step back, and let the Republicans have to figure it out. Because it, for them, was never about the policy. It's all about the political gamemanship and political power. Well, power was on our side and the policy is on our side. And so we didn't have to, everybody's like, you're fighting so hard. I'm like, I'm just showing up and waiting. And, and maybe that's the hardest part, is to not say anything and to just wait. And that's what we needed to do. And that's what, when we went to the floor a week ago Wednesday, and I knew we had the votes, and I was fairly, well, I wasn't certain, but I was fairly confident we would get it done. I waited until Tuesday night to make the necessary phone calls to my colleagues across the aisle. We were counting noses, and I waited to check in because I wanted less daylight in between,
Yes.
and I thought, if I wait till just sort of the last minute on Tuesday night, we'd probably be good to go. And I did, and just, they were really very agreeable conversations, very respectful. And so I just showed up, and when we met as a caucus, I said, look, the people are on our side. We know this is what we need. I'm confident that we've got the votes. I would ask that we take a posture of just quiet resolve and reserve, and that we don't get on our microphones. If they want to show their asses, let's not give them a competing narrative.
Yeah.
And that's, there was one point of order called and it was retracted. And beyond that, there were no floor speeches from the Democrats. It was a little bit frustrating because we thought we would get, our quotes or comments through the media, but the media, because the Republicans were the only ones talking, the media quoted the Republicans up one side and down the other. And I was like, well, it's all right. We'll get our day. But I have noticed in the press, and y'all, if this is something you can highlight and chatter about, it would be really helpful, that whenever there's any kind of reporting and they quote senators and representatives, there's usually 3 Republicans to 1 Democrat. And in this case, they couldn't, oh my gosh, they couldn't just let the Democrats have their moment. And I just noticed I bought the Republic today and I bought the Arizona Daily Star. And the Arizona Daily Star says Democratic governor, and the Republic says Arizona governor. And I thought, isn't that interesting that even within our reporting, as we report, when I went through all the nonsense I went through last year, with hiding the Bibles, I found it really interesting that, again, and I didn't give interviews because I knew that I was going to get beat up. But honestly, the few statements that we released, they didn't go and ask any more Democrats. They went after 4, 5, 6 Republicans. And I thought, this is really interesting that the scales are weighted. And so, to be quite honest, the only thing that the Democrats can do is show up, use the rules, focus on the policy, and go home.
Do you think that that's like that maybe the journalists there have some sort of bias? Do you think it's like this whole like both sides thing, or is it that they're so used to the Republicans being in charge?
I think yes to all of the above. I do think some of the journalists have a bias. Certainly I think, Maricopa, when you look at registration, I think journalists are trying to consider the audience, but I do think it's all of the above. I mean, certainly Pima County tracks a little more Democrat plus progressive, right? And so you'll find a little bit, but even down here, sometimes I'm like, why are they quoting the Republicans? That's the non-story. But I find that the information does end up very partisan in the newspapers as well. And maybe that's just the moment in time that I've stepped into as a leader, an elected official, right? And but clearly I can work with my colleagues across the aisle and choose to. I don't agree with them, but I knew we needed to get to 31. I didn't care where those votes came from. We needed to get there.
So I have a question, and then I have a question from the audience, and then I have a question from myself that I'm gonna have to write down so I don't forget it. But first, from the audience, James is asking, did the old territory laws simply transfer to the state when the state was formed? So there's the first question. Did they just transfer when the state was formed? Do you know?
Well, there were 2 different junctures where that law was, 3 actually, where the law was so I want to say in the 1930s, was it 33, 30? I think it was 33, that it was put in there, reasserted, and then in the 70s and 77, when Roe obviously was established in 73, so then 77. But the 77, there was a Democratic governor, there was a Democrat president of the Senate, but it was one of those big taking one section of law and transferring it. So that, I think, is where the transfer, and people didn't catch it. And so so I think yes, but then in 2022, with former Senator Bartow, that was very intentional. And I was in the Senate at that time, and I can just remember just being so angry and sick to my stomach. And
because I believe, didn't they add that amendment once they realized that there was an even harsher law on the books? So they were like, oh, 15 weeks, this is something that we can get away with. And then they were like, oh, check this out. You know what? Let's write it in there that
but it doesn't supersede. And I think they've known that all along. Again, the fact that the repeal, and so it was, let's look at that as well, because 2019, it was Representative Solomon who started dropping that bill. And there wasn't a mirror bill in the Senate until Raquel Taran got over there in 2022. So she and I jumped from the House into the Senate to finish off the 55th legislative session. We were both over there for the second regular session. And so Raquel, former Senator Taran, dropped the mirror bill in the Senate. And that is probably when it got on Nancy Bartow's radar, because I don't think it was probably on her radar, but it had been in the House. For me, I was really surprised that Representative Grass even knew about House Bill 2677. And that he was, that he went after it to make the motion and drop it and not even talk to me, because I thought, when I dropped it, I thought there's no way in Hades, but I wanted to drop it because it was important. Who knew that the Supreme Court would hand us this moment? But again, we were ready to go. We had our plan and we were able to shift because the bill had been dropped. And there was a member in the Senate, there was a calculated move to not drop it in the Senate. I guess the language had been drafted and the choice was made not to drop the bill. And yet Senator Ana Hernandez was like, can't we? And so then that's when they actually got the process started on the 17th of April, which was great because that was the second day that we put my bill on the board and it didn't go through. But because of what they were doing in the Senate, it upped the pressure, so it actually kind of worked out where just that one more introduction, one more move, one more parliamentary move for a late introduction of a bill kicked up, some of the chaos over in the Senate. It added pressure in the House. The Republicans could see that the Democrats were organized and we were ready for the moment. And if one more thing I can add to that too, was that when Gress pushed his button and we realized, oh, he's coming, we pushed our buttons simultaneously. Well, I'm on the aisle on one side, Mr. Livingston, the chair of appropriations, is on the aisle directly, and then Gress sits on the other side. So Mr. Livingston was in between the two of us when both of us were pushing our buttons. And he was kind of looking and waiting to see, and there was somehow a lull in the action. And I walked over and I was like, how does it feel to be in the middle here? And he was like, you need to stand down. Our people need time to get their votes in order. And he no, but here's the thing. I just looked at him and I'm like, Mr. Livingston, I'm not playing games here. I am being a good foot soldier today because this is what leadership has asked of me. At which point his eyes got big and he realized, oh, shoot, they're organized. And then he went up to the dais, got involved, and that's how we ended up getting a pause on that very first day. At that point, he thought, here I was shenanigating again, right? And it wasn't that at all. We were organized and we were ready. We had been working for this moment. So, all right, I sort of got off track, but that's still more of the context.
No, that's good. That's
behind the scenes, which most people don't see, right?
Yeah, that's the first question. So now the next part of James's question is, are there any other old forgotten laws? Like, do you think that there will be a review, like just to make sure we don't have any of these crazy laws on the books, like, I don't know, like you can trade your wife for a donkey or something like that. I don't know,
I'm sure there are. Rep Solomon and I were talking the other day, and I think there's still some more work that we need to do when it comes to IVF. Interestingly enough, the observation was made over in the Senate when we were listening to a lot of the speeches and the grandstanding over there, that a lot of arguments were being made to that would support doing away with the death penalty, which I thought, isn't this really interesting? The arguments, and I think they were arguments for argument's sake and not well thought out, right? Not consistent with any ideology or any, so at any rate, I'm sure there are, but, again, this does absolutely, highlight, okay, let's get back in there and let's see what else we need to work with. There is a law that is somewhat antiquated. It's pretty gross, that I dropped a bill to address. And again, it's in the realm of reproductive freedoms, but it comes with, it's in relation to incarcerated individuals. And Stacy Barchinger, I think it was Stacy, wrote an article at the beginning of session. She caught wind of this bill, and it's got a couple of things. And one is that anytime a female goes through intake or is incarcerated and has to be searched, they don't make provisions for a female to do the search. It can be a man, and that's in state statute. And in that same bill that I dropped, they can induce labor against a pregnant woman's consent, without consent. So there's some laws there that we are trying to address. I dropped a bill. I will continue as long as I get reelected. I will continue to drop, those bills to shine a light. Knock on wood, we get into the majority, and then these bills will sail through to the governor's desk. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to answer your question, there's stuff in there. I mean, it's a lot of digging, and you have to know where to look. And Rep. Salmon, highly intelligent, fierce warrior goddess, right?
The goddess
She,
Athena. Yep.
yeah, right. I miss her dearly. I'm so thankful for the time that I got to spend with her in the legislature. She's an incredible mentor to me. And we always joke that we are two very different people. Theologically, we're very different, and how we approach our work at the ledge was very, very different. But without fail, we always ended up in the same space. And I was like, there's a story there.
Mhm.
Presbyterian minister, she is diehard avowed atheist, right?
Mhm.
And yet the two of us make such an incredible team. We, on so many things, are lockstep. And it's just interesting. I miss her mentorship greatly. I can no longer claim being new, but it still feels that way, right? And boy, was she seasoned and down for the fight.
Yeah, she and Juan are, two of my favorite people. And I
Right, right.
I really enjoyed Juan's face yesterday. Wait, whatever it was, Wednesday,
Yeah.
when oh God, Hoffman and Kern just kept going on, and he's like, point of order. Can we just vote
Yeah.
already?
He didn't even stand up. He's just in his point of order.
Yeah, he was like this, like, I am so done here. It was fantastic. It was really great. There is another question here in the chat. Is Senator Bullock playing games with her yes vote? Why would she vote to repeal when her husband supported the law?
Oh my
I mean,
gosh. The thing of it is, I don't think it's, I mean, call it games, call it whatever. The fact of the matter is when we show up to do our job, and especially if you're in the minority party, and I think this is where the Republicans are starting to understand the nuances of how the minority party steps through the legislature. We can support policy based on the face of policy alone. And a lot of times it's going to be in opposition to what Republicans want. They don't like the policy. It doesn't fit their scope of what they think government should be and do. But we can also look at the political calculations, and Democrats and the minority party, we have to do both. We've got to look at politics, and on certain policies, we know that people in our purple district, we've got to make room for people to be able to vote in multiple ways. And abortion up until this moment has been something that the Republicans could just disagree with the policy and go on their merry way. In fact, they could ram harmful, restrictive policy down our throats and go on their merry way. And they were very merry about it. But because at this point, we know that the will of the people is not where they reside in their political ideology, right? That they have to now start factoring in the politics in the conversation. And that is exactly what Senator Bullock has had to do. She's got Judy Schreiber nipping at her heels.
yes.
And Judy could not be more pro-choice, pro-abortion. And she has consistently been a top vote getter. Like, she unsat Kern the first time, right? I mean, so here's the thing. Bullock needed to get daylight between herself and her husband's vote and get some distance there. But I think in her heart of hearts, where her heart resides is with the 1864 ban. And so it could be seen as playing a game, but she was making a political calculation. And there are days when we have to show up and sometimes make political calculations. Fortunately, on the days that I've had to make a political calculation, it's been some of the hardest days. It has been something though that hasn't gone against my values. And there's been a good reason for it. But I think, you know, most of the way I approach really truly a lot of times is I'm just very policy oriented and policy focused, but you can never not calculate in the political landscape. And for us, you know, it wasn't politically expedient for me to drop a bill that repeals the 1864 law. It wasn't going to get a hearing. It wasn't going to get any Republican signatures. But because the political landscape shifted, it gave us a gift. And so then we were ready to go. And so you can never discount the political landscape. You always have to factor that in as you're working on your policy. It just depends on which one carries more weight with you. Some people are all about the political landscape and they are very transactional, and that is how they show up and do their work. You know, so it's, but
I would say probably too, if Shauna Bullock was in neighboring 27, she'd be right there with Kern and Toma and the rest of them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And see, and that's the thing, is that you really do have to look at that and factor it in and read the landscape as well.
And to me, that's always been kind of, and not to go too far off the topic here, but that's been a frustrating thing for me. I'm in LD5, and you know, LD5 and some other very blue districts in the state of Arizona have had some very purple representation, and I am super over it. You know, like I am so tired of those blue districts having people who are like, maybe I'm, you know, pro-choice. I'm not quite sure. Like, we don't need that. Or maybe I kind of want prayers in schools. I'm not, you know, no, we don't need that. Please, let's get real true blue candidates in the true blue districts. But that's, yeah, that's my own hang up there.
No, I don't think it's a hang up. I mean, I think we have to look, because we are in a moment where there is disproportionate extremist representation in the state legislature. And so it's not just your own hang up, it's a real concern, because if we do not and are not engaged, what happens is where you get a plethora of extremists who are not representing the people they are supposed to be showing up to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it hard, because most people do not pay attention to the state legislature. And I can tell you that from being on the doors. I show up and they want to talk about Joe Biden or Donald Trump, or the street potholes, or the homeless population encampment. And I have to continue to redirect and say, that's your city council. Here's who that person is. You can find them on the city. Or what are you going to do about Donald Trump? And all of y'all, I don't function at that level of government. And I've had people say, well, what does the state do? Well, this is what we do.
Everything. Yeah, like that's everything. You want to, you know, your public schools are funded through the state legislature. The decision to expand vouchers to millionaires and billionaires, that happened through the state legislature. Like everything. Whether, oh my God, the anti-Marxist bill about not being like that goes through the state legislature. Conspiracy theorists right now are
10 commandments.
the right? Anti-satanic displays and erections. Sorry. I taught middle school for a long time, and there's a reason why. I also, can I just, another shout out, because when that bill was being discussed on the floor of the Senate, Senator Sundaration said something, like when she was speaking, she said something about satanic displays and erections, and she's like, I know that Senator Hoffman dislikes erections, however, and then she just kept going. And it was beautiful. And same yesterday when Matt says, I love satanic erections.
I love it. Yeah.
But then also, like, what was the other statement just on Wednesday? Oh, Ana Hernandez again. She's got, because you two, It's a master class on how to keep your cool. I don't know how you do it, how you struggle through those points of order every single time when you couldn't say contraception or birth control. I was losing my mind. However, yesterday when Anthony Kern was talking about, being a congressional candidate, and then Senator Hernandez says, well, I'm not a congressional candidate who's polling at 3%. So anyway, and then they just move on. And you all are an inspiration. I dodged a bullet by not getting elected by the good people of LD2 because
Oh,
I don't
no.
think I would have been able to be as graceful with the graceless the way that you all are, because the behaviors, and I encourage everybody who's watching this, who accesses it later on YouTube, take a second and go to the archived committee meetings of your state legislature. Just go to any Senate judiciary or Senate government or Senate elections, and you will see some of the worst behavior in your entire life. And then sometimes these knuckleheads, they get involved in other branches of government. Last night, I watched in Paradise Valley as Representative Coliden came and essentially disparaged everybody in the Paradise Valley School Board and promised that Republicans would take over the body. And I'm just like, go to the House, buddy. Nobody asked for you to show up tonight.
Right.
But they were attacking the
they gotta punch
superintendent.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Oh God, they gotta punch somewhere.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's so true. So remind us real quick, what legislative, because I'm very, Maricopa County, which district in Pima County do you represent?
Legislative District 21.
Okay.
And it encompasses parts of 3 counties.
Oh, that's right, because you're in Bisbee too, aren't you?
And Nogales, thanks to gerrymandering. I go all the way down to the border, cut across the border, carve out Representative Gail Griffin's home and up into Naco and Bisbee.
Oh, that's so crazy. And and I'm glad that you bring up gerrymandering too, because these legislatures throughout the entire 50 United States are the ones that determine the budget, the policies, the spending for everything. I mean, we're seeing what's happening in Tennessee. I don't know if you ever follow Jess Piper from Missouri. She's a big advocate for public schools, but she talks about gerrymandering in Missouri. All these places have been gerrymandered to the point where even though the population of these states could very well be more like a 50-50 split.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I am grateful though that you do represent Bisbee, because I know that I will see you at the Bisbee Pride.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I love Bisbee Pride.
Bisbee Pride is my absolute favorite. Mars, unfortunately, is not on the call today, but they were one of our volunteers last year, and we got to see Representative Stahl Hamilton. So that is, I believe, the weekend of the 14th, 15th, and 16th, if you're in the south part of the state. And I'll tell you what, it's the funnest pride in the state of Arizona. Am I right?
Yes, yes. It's such a shorty, cute little parade, but then just, oh my God, it's a celebration. And if I can just share a quick little anecdote of why we just need to celebrate and never forget that no matter how hard it gets, we have got to carve out space to celebrate. There was a young couple who I swear they were in their late 20s, early 30s, that in the plaza afterwards, and we just happened to bump into them, and they were a young couple from Safford who brought up a group of 8. It seemed like, teenagers, middle school to early high school teenagers, for Bisbee Pride, because I don't think those children have a strong community in Safford. They were from Safford and they came, and I just thought, oh, these children get to come and celebrate who they are. They don't have to defend it. They don't have to hide it. They don't have to be worried about anything. They can absolutely celebrate and be celebrated. I almost burst into tears. It was just so meaningful to me, because how hard we have to fight against those attacks to our trans children, and even our LGBTQ youth, all of them, how hard we have to fight. And to be in a space, no matter how small, how whatever, to celebrate youth and let them just be public without having to fight to not have their existence erased,
Mhm.
is to me the most powerful and meaningful. And it's not just here we are. It's like, let's celebrate. Here we are.
Mhm. And speaking of celebration, another crazy headline out of the Capitol this week. I think it was on Tuesday that Representative Lorena Austin, who represents, I think, LD 9, had she's a gender nonconforming, non-binary member of the House of Representatives, native to Mesa, Arizona, family owns a business. They're like an amazing
Generations.
generation,
Yeah.
amazing person, amazing family. And so she went through the process, no matter what Ben Thomas says, she went through the process and reserved a room to have a drag story hour. There were no children present. It was more to get an understanding of, here, this is what a drag story hour really looks like. And this is how benign it is and how wholesome and inclusive it is. And then, of course, Anthony Kern, once again, who, by the way, mentioned on Wednesday that
Oh,
they
yeah.
they lost the marriage vote. They were tricked by the Democrats and the media. So don't make no mistake that these bills targeting the LGBTQ community and our reproductive rights are completely related. It's about power and control. But so that event happened. Kern had to make a big deal out of it because he's running against Toma, and they have to be these puritanical, evangelical, extremist, QAnon conspiracy theorists. So then Toma got all mad about it. And then the very next day, which this was already planned, they had an LGBTQ Youth Day of Visibility. And speaking of like Bisbee Pride and how like it made you cry, those like watching those kids sit around that big conference table.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean, you were there for part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The big
Yeah.
thing those kids said was like, you know what? We're already having a hard enough time navigating through life with our peers. It sure would be nice if the adults and especially the elected officials in our life would stop bullying us, you
Right.
know? That was their one ask. But then they did also say, like, this made me feel seen and included and heard. And I bet you there's a couple of kids that were sitting around that table who will seriously consider in a few years when they're old enough to run for the legislature or their school board or whatever, you
Right.
know?
Right. Oh, I'm sure they can absolutely see themselves in Representative Austin. Yeah, it is. I was really disappointed that Speaker Toma didn't um, remove his tweet once he actually had a face-to-face conversation with Senator Austin. And that's the hard part, is that when he realized that there was no trickery, there was nobody, nothing, it was absolutely Kern who was popping a nutty because, Kern has such delicate sensibilities. And he gets cornered and he screams Jesus.
Sometimes even on the floor of the Senate.
Right.
Shamala
That's,
hamala, shamala
that's
hamala.
his trump card for everything. God, and
Anyway.
everybody claps, God.
It's so funny because he blocked me on Twitter and then he decided that he wants to bully me again, so he's unblocked me on Twitter. And I don't care one way or the other. I think it's hilarious.
Well, he's got to punch at somebody, and it's like he doesn't want to put up with you until all of a sudden he has nobody to punch. So okay, let's let her back in. But it's a losing battle with you. He's going to get frustrated the first time you retort. He's going to block you again because he can't win. He can't.
I mean, and he's so insignificant, honestly. I mean, like, he's such a blip, although, I mean, a blip that I've heard from people who have attended his church, and how they've come out of that church, having to undo years of spiritual and in some cases other kinds of abuse.
Well, it's not spiritual. There's nothing spiritual about it. It is religious manipulation. And yesterday, one of the questions that was tossed to the governor, and I'm trying to remember, it was along the lines of the separation of church and state. And the governor handled it just fine, but oh man, I was getting itchy palms. I was like, put me in, coach. Let me have this one, please. And I did say it at one of the press conferences after, or maybe it was the first or second, maybe it was the first failed attempt to get my bill on the board. I was just like, this is not a theological issue, and Ben Toma does not speak for my soul. My soul does not need saving by him. And this is about reproductive health care. This is about making sure people have the access that they need and the freedoms they deserve. It has nothing to do with theology, and he needs to take his religion elsewhere. And that's, I really wish that the press would ask me that question, because I would say this is not a theological issue. It is a government, it's none of your business issue. Get out.
Yeah, fully agree. A couple of questions before I forget. First one is this the first bill you've ever passed?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God.
Can I say something? So you heard on both the House and the floor how our colleagues across the aisle were screaming, it wasn't heard in committee. It wasn't debated on the floor. Well, I have said this all along. My bills never get a hearing. They never get debated on the floor. And so even now, I still have 100% track record of none of my bills being heard in committee. But I got it across the finish line.
But at least one got signed by the governor. Hey, that's all you need. I mean, that's a pretty good answer.
Third read in both chambers without having to go through committee.
You know what? Because sitting through committee is horrible. So good for you.
I know. I don't care. It just is kind of ironic that I'm like, y'all don't hear my bills. And then they were like, you never got a hearing in committee. And I'm like, well, whose damn fault is that? Not mine. You know?
Oh man,
So
Nanny
boo boo.
I'd love to like organize, because you have like school field trips all the time where they go and they just kind of wander around, maybe look at Wesley.
Not as much anymore. We were just talking about this. We don't have the children, not as much anymore, Janine.
We need to bring them back, and we need to have them all sit. Like, I just would love, or just send them all a video. I don't, like whatever grade level, I don't care, but send them a video of government or judiciary Senate committee hearing, and they will be like, this can't be happening, and I've got to do something to change this, because again, worst behavior I've ever seen. Okay, next question, because it is 12:49. We got about 11 minutes left.
Sorry.
Okay, so it is so Annalise Ortiz, your colleague in the House, and it's Oscar, right? Oscar de los Santos. Were those the two that have been now reprimanded?
Oh, ethics hearing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oscar was stripped from his committees.
I saw that he was stripped, and so was Gress. He really had a temper tantrum there at the very end. It was adorable. Let's see. But so when is their ethics committee hearing? Do you have any idea? Because you all are taking 2 weeks off now, right?
Next week off, and we'll be back on the 15th. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I don't know, but I don't, who knows if they actually will have the wherewithal to hold but can we back up to the being stripped of committees?
Yes, please.
There were a number of us complicit in making the motion, getting the bill on the board, voting, whatever. But the two people that got pulled from committees were two gay men.
Yeah.
And it's beyond me why the press has not picked up on that or said anything about it. And not only that, but the one committee that they have in common is appropriations. And who is the chair of appropriations?
Is it? I don't know.
Mr. Livingston.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Who was in the aisle?
Yeah.
Raising the roof, cheering after the second failed attempt. And I mean, nothing happens by accident around that place, rarely. And the speaker doesn't do anything without the chairman's consent.
Well, and I mean, I'm not a Matt Gress fan at all. And I really hope that this is his one and only term, to be quite honest. But for appropriations, he's actually qualified for it. Like he's actually.
But why the two gay members? Why the two gay members?
Well, I mean, Senator Kern said that the marriage mistake, like they say the quiet part out loud these days. And again, because when I first came into this organization too, that there's a lot of people, right? Maybe older generations who maybe don't understand like trans issues or these attacks on trans. And, even Richard Dawkins has said some really messy, ugly things about trans people. Sam Harris has said some really terrible things about trans people. But, I can see what they're doing here. And it's so frustrating to me, first of all, to understand the science about and the psychology about being trans, to not buy into the sexy headlines from the New York Times that demonize
Right.
trans people. Like
Right.
even in Peoria Unified, there's a woman that speaks there frequently, and for the longest time I couldn't quite gauge what side she was on. You know what I mean? And then the last time she spoke, she said something about how, where were you all 2, 3 years ago? I've looked at all the records. I've looked at every video. Nobody was talking about trans people 2, 3 years ago. So where was all that hysteria? What,
Right.
and again, it's manufactured hysteria,
Mhm.
searching
Yeah.
for solutions to problems that don't exist so that they can further agenda and
Well,
their
it's amassing power. They are using it to amass power. And that, yes, and the further agendaizing, it is all to amass power and for control. Let's go right back to where it is. The landscape is shifting, people are losing control. And so what do is you go and you attack, you villainize, you other. We've seen it again and again and again and again throughout history. And this is just one more way that it's one last grasp of people trying to hold on to the last vestiges of power. And I will say this because I think it needs to be said out loud. This is all about white Christian nationalism. And when I say white supremacy, white nationalists, wrapped in this false idea of what Christianity is, but it is using religion, and all of it is amassing power to remain in control.
Mhm. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to clip this part of the video so we can use it for fundraising efforts.
Oh my God. Oh, and all my passion and my anger. So serious. Let me just say it plainly.
I mean, I say it all the time whenever I have an event. And Andrew Seidel, probably one of the most prominent people in this space, says the greatest threat to our democracy is white Christian nationalism.
It is absolutely 100%. And oh my gosh, that, Jeannie, I will tell you, that is where it's hard for me to remain rooted and to remain grounded, and not allow my buttons to be pushed, to be triggered, right? I all kinds of crap get said on that house floor, and it it's such bad theology, and because my faith goes to the core of who I am, it just grates against me, and creates so much anger inside. Like,
Mhm.
um it's so hard because I think these what is getting used and what is getting spouted couldn't be further from Christianity. And somehow they're the ones that get all the amens and all the applause, and they leverage it for their power with this certitude of being so damn right. And and I don't know. So I don't know. It's just really, really hard for me. And at some point, when we get in the majority, and if I am in that chamber, there will be some changes. There will be some changes.
Excellent.
And I know you all know where I'm going to start.
I think it might be invocations going away. Yay! You can also get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance too. Like, we don't need that. And also, I would just like to point out to every single Democratic group that I go to here in the Valley, we don't need the Pledge of Allegiance there either. I don't know. I guess we're all used to it. We've been doing it since we were in kindergarten or whatever, but like, we don't need it. Let's just not. If I'd just rather not. Okay, so you're in LD 21. Now, did you have a primary this time? Wait, and do you do the single shot, or how does that work?
So it's a highly blue Democratic district. And I have been targeted. So yes, there will be a primary. I have been targeted, and the person who's in the race has told everybody that they need me out. They want me out. And that the reasoning right now is because they say it's time for somebody from Santa Cruz County to be elected. Now they're not targeting my seatmate. They're targeting me.
Hmm. Interesting. I hear you're not saying their name, so I'm gonna look that up later.
And the thing of it is last election cycle, when this was the newly formed LD21. It's my understanding that in a Democratic primary and in a contested general, it was brought to my attention that one of the members was running around telling everybody to single shot them. And so when you look at the votes from the last election cycle, there's a huge disparity. I got my clock cleaned. And it wasn't because I was telling people to single shot me.
Interesting. Okay.
So the single shot strategy does get used in my district. That's the answer to that. Yeah. But
Gotcha.
they punched first. So
Yep. No, it's a whole thing. Well, okay, it's 12:58, and I want to honor everybody here, their time. Let's see. There's a few comments I suppose I should get to. Mostly just a lot of like praise for you. Everybody's just grateful that you're there. Yes, Turning Point USA is the epitome of evil. 100% right on that one. Let's see. Get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance. Absolutely. Yes, thank you, actually, Senator Representative
both,
Stahl Hamilton.
right?
For joining us last minute, because for last minute we had like 42 people here at 1 minute, so that's fantastic. Debbie's here to say that I'm in LD16 in Pinal County and we have an uphill climb to get the extremists out, but we're working hard. Thank you for working hard, Debbie.
Yeah. Keith
More,
Seaman, Representative Seaman's been great for LD16. We really adore him.
yeah, he's a sweetheart. I've met him a couple times and he's a great guy, a man of few words, but he's a great guy. Yeah, so again, great. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I was able to pivot today. And I'm hopeful that our guest Matt Gertz will be able to join us sometime in the near future. Lindsay always does an amazing job of getting so many diverse speakers here. And remember too, starting in probably like August, September, we're just gonna drill. Like, here's Vic Arenow to talk about the judges, because that's a
Right.
whole other thing. They're putting a ballot referral on the ballot that would do away with judicial elections, and it would be retroactive before, like it would negate, if we vote out Clint Bolick, it would negate that vote. So it's
Right.
really important. So we're going to have folks from League of Women Voters to talk about the ballot initiatives. We're going to have Vic Arenow. We're going to have people from CEBV. So please make sure you stay tuned to that. But before we go, Stahl Hamilton, Stephanie, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call you Senator, and just that's how I got to know you in the first place. What in this job that you do, which is very difficult, what gives you hope?
Oh my gosh. What gives me hope? The thing of it is, I get to work with some really incredible people. And when I am out and about in the community, it's doing the work actually that gives me hope. It's the face-to-face engagements. It's being on the front lines, in the front lines with the people of Arizona. I know I need to be there. As long as the voters will have me, as long as my neighbors want me, we are changing, and Arizona is changing, and I, we are we're getting closer to where we want to be, and we've got some fantastic people. We forged a really good team this last legislative session, and I couldn't be more proud and pleased to work with such dedicated public servants. Can I tell you, I've not had a chance really to sit with everything that has happened this week. And you all really helped me have my victory lap. And so I want to say thank you. I've not had a chance to really celebrate it. It really has been fun to just tell the story and do that little victory lap. So thank you all for being so gracious and having me on today.
Well, that just filled my whole bucket, and you give me hope every single time I see you. Are any chance you're going to be at the National Organization of Women event this Saturday in Phoenix?
I'm on the doors. I'm
Well,
on the
that I was testing you because I wanted to make sure you're either canvassing or doing call time. You have no business going to any kind of
I'm
events.
on the doors and down in Bisbee with I'm doing two things. So I will be on the doors nearby and then hustling down to Bisbee to meet with my people down in Bisbee. So I'm working hard.
Right on.
But
Well,
have a whale of a time.
I definitely will. And again, we're so grateful to have you. I know every time I see you, I make sure I give you a big hug, but I'm going to give you an extra big hug the next time I see you. All right.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
everybody. Have a great weekend. See y'all later. Thank you.